Hey, Holy Readers, this is episode 44 of Holy Holy. I can't believe it. We only have 8 episodes left, and then we'll be through our Bible reading program for this year. We'll have read the Old Testament once, the New Testament twice. Congratulations for making it this far. That's so exciting. I want you to share this with your friends, and let's gear up for 2025 because we're going to start it all over again. We're going to read together and learn new things each week because the Bible is inexhaustible. We can study forever and never know it all. So 2025 is coming, but hang in there. Let's finish this year strong. This week, we're going to talk about the reading from October the 28th through November the 3rd. So this includes Job 20 through 27, Psalm 121, and Mark 3 through 16. So in Job, there are cycles of dialogues, and the majority of Job are these dialogue cycles where we talk through his friends, right? Each of his friends are giving their theological ideas. They're giving their ideas as to why Job is suffering. Then it comes back to Job, and Job gives his reasons and he gives his defense. And then we cycle through all the friends again and what they think. And then we come back to Job. So there are 3 dialogue cycles. Here they are. Chapters 4 through 14 is the first one. Chapters 15 through 21 is the second one. And then chapters 22 through 31 is the third one. So where we are at the peak of this accusatory tone. We're right here at this third dialogue cycle. And they are vehemently accusing Job. Eliphaz in this cycle goes as far as to accuse Job of specific sins, even though there's no evidence of those sins. Now, Bildad, he recognizes the majesty of God, but he doesn't really add anything new to this cycle. No new insights. He only speaks briefly. Zophar is silent during this cycle. And then we come to Job's final defense. This is Job chapters 26 through 31, where Job is defending himself for the final time before we hear God speak again. So we're looking forward to that time here at the end of Job. Let's talk about Mark. Last week we read Mark 1 and 2, and this week we read the rest of the book. So let's talk about it as a whole today. Remember that we have 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And Mark, even though it's the second in our series here, most scholars believe that it was the first one to be written. And it was most likely written between 60 and 70 AD. And it's traditionally attributed to John Mark. Remember in our readings in the book of Acts, you find this character John Mark. And this is most likely Mark, who wrote the Gospel of Mark. And Mark is an eyewitness account, but Mark wasn't one of the disciples. Who did he travel with? He was a companion of Peter. And so Mark is writing down Peter's eyewitness account to all that Jesus did and taught. So here it's a fast pace. It's a fast pace in the gospel. If you read the whole Gospel of Mark, especially in one sitting, you'll find your heart racing because it's this word immediately. I've been having fun as you and I've been reading together. I could show you, I've just been like circling the word immediately as I come across it. And as an adverb, this word immediately appears more than 40 times in the Gospel of Mark. It's the Greek word euthus. And the idea is to show the fast pace and the dynamic urgency of Jesus's ministry. That Jesus's ministry was a short time on the earth. It was urgent. It was dynamic. It also shows us the authority of Jesus. That Jesus said it, and because all authority is given to him, it happened. Jesus said it. It happened immediately. Let's talk about the purpose and the audience, because each of the Gospels is written for a different purpose to relay a certain message to a particular audience. So Mark is most likely written to a Gentile audience, not a Jewish audience. Matthew is written to a Jewish audience, but Mark is written to a Gentile audience. And this is most likely Roman Christians. And here's how we kind of gather this. Number one, Mark explains Jewish customs. So he wouldn't explain Jewish customs to a Jewish audience, right? He also uses Latin terms, and he emphasizes actions rather than lengthy teachings. He's wanting to show the action of Jesus and his ministry. Here's the purpose. It is to present Jesus as a powerful, active Son of God who came to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. That's Mark 10:45. So he's wanting to portray Jesus as this suffering servant character. We have two major sections in Mark. We've got Mark chapters 1-8, and this is Jesus's Galilean ministry. And then we have Mark 9-16, which is the journey to Jerusalem and Jesus's passion. So let's focus right now on that first section, 1-8, the Galilean ministry. Mark really highlights Jesus' authority over sickness, over demons, and over nature, that all power is Jesus's, and he has authority over every realm. And we see this through a lot of healing of the sick and his power casting out demons to showcase that he is the Messiah. And so this section ends with Peter's acknowledgement that Jesus is the Christ. And that is a real turning point narrative in the book of Mark, that Jesus is the Christ, and Peter says so. Then we've got chapters 9-16. This is the journey to Jerusalem, Jesus' passion. So this is a shift in the narrative stories here in Mark. So it really turns to Jesus' suffering and his death and his resurrection. And here, Jesus is emphasized as the suffering servant. When we say the words suffering servant, this should ring a bell for you for the words of Isaiah. Isaiah 53, you and I know very well, but there are all of these suffering servant passages in the book of Isaiah. So a lot of the Jews, most of the Jews, believed that their Messiah was going to come and be a political figure, that he was going to take Israel back away from Roman occupation and restore it as an autonomous country that would rule its own people, and the Messiah would stand as ruler over all. And that's not what Jesus was. Jesus came not as a political figure, but he came as one that would offer his life as a ransom for many. That threw a lot of people, still throws a lot of people today. So Mark was emphasizing Jesus as the suffering servant, and we get the climax in his death, his resurrection, and his demonstration over death as he's raised to life. Something that's really cool is the idea of the messianic secret in the book of Mark. Jesus told so many. He said, "Don't tell people who I am." And a lot of scholars believe that this is because Jesus was wanting to redefine what they believed the Messiah would be. He's not a political figure. We've talked about Mark 10:45 briefly, but this is so pivotal because it summarizes Jesus's mission, and it summarizes how Mark wants to portray Jesus. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life for the ransom for many. So Jesus's whole ministry mission is one of humility and service. And that's the same for me and you, friend. Our whole mission as Christians on the earth should be that of humility and service. Mark also, he goes to great lengths to show the disciples in an unflattering light. This is to humanize them. And he shows their misunderstandings, their fears, and their failures so that you and I can relate. When we read the scriptures, you should be putting yourself here in these narratives. What if we were following Jesus today? What would it look like if we're walking around Galilee with Jesus? We're journeying to Jerusalem with him. We would have fears and we would have failures, but Jesus still used his disciples to accomplish his mission on the earth. And Jesus can use you and me despite our fears, despite our failures. He can use us to accomplish his purpose on the earth. The last thing I want to highlight is this abrupt ending. So most likely you'll have a footnote about the book of Mark ending at Mark 16:8. And that's when the women see the empty tomb and they run off and they don't say anything. So then the longer ending is 16, 9 through 20. This includes Jesus appearing to Mary Magdalene, the 2 disciples on the road, Jesus appearing to the 11, his commission to preach and perform miracles. So here's what I want to say about it, that Jesus, God watches over his word. And what we have, whether you believe that Mark should have ended at the 8th verse or it should have gone on, either way, the longer ending is theologically correct. The longer ending, it says everything in line with the theology of the Bible, okay? So don't discount the longer ending. It's theologically right. It's different maybe from the way that Mark wrote, because Mark wrote so distinctively like abrupt and fast paced. And to add this longer ending, maybe it seems stylistically different from the rest of the way Mark wrote. Regardless, God watches over his word. What we have is the infallible, inerrant word of God. The longer ending can be trusted just like the shorter ending. God can use the longer ending just like he can use the shorter ending. The longer ending is theologically correct, just like the shorter ending. So don't let those things throw you. Don't let those footnotes throw you. Embrace all of the word of God. Preach the gospel and use it to build yourself up, your family, and the church. I hope you've enjoyed today. Hope you'll email me, Jasmine at regenerationnashville.org. See us on Google, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, the whole thing. God bless. I'll see you next week.